All right, then, let's get started. Um, are there any questions about anything we did last week or in any of the previous weeks? Okay, great. Uh, Today we are doing survey flow, and this is where you can do some really cool stuff, to use the technical term. Um, Survey flow works on the entire survey as your respondents go through it. Um, Unlike uh, where you're doing in some question randomization, loop and merge, and even some of the skip and display logic works on a more micro level within the survey. But the survey flow works on the entire can work on the entire survey. And so I have a real quick survey here. Age, asking if they're over 18. Uh, my BMI question that we looked at a little bit last week. And then just some other questions and blocks, just so we have some things to work with. So to get to the survey flow, you come over here and it's this second icon over here. And it will show you each of your blocks, and you can see why it's good to uh, name your blocks, because it makes it a lot easier when you're in the survey flow to know what you're working with. By default, these would all be called block 1, block 2, block 3. That's not real helpful. The other thing is you can click on here and it will show you the questioner questions. And this shows that it's a radio button, and you come down here and it'll show you what type of questions they are. That kind of makes your life a little bit easier as well. I'm going to come over here and just quickly show you this show flow IDs. If you turn that on, now you get these little numbers, these little tags or labels, whatever you want to call them, up in the corners. And this can be useful when you're downloading your data. There's an option to have the randomization shown, the what order each of your respondents saw each of your elements. And that's we'll leave it on for now, and you'll see how it builds itself out a little bit further. So you see there's add below, and that's to add these things. I'm going to go through those in a moment. You can move your blocks. This is a very easy way to move your blocks if you have a lot of them, a big survey. You can duplicate it. Boom. Of course, you can delete it, and it'll ask if you want to delete it. So let's go here for add a new element, just so we can see everything a little bit better. And we'll go through these. You can show any particular block as many times as you want through your survey without necessarily having to duplicate the block. So if I want to show age again here, it shows it again, and I only have that one block in the main survey. So this can be helpful, if you're going to have different sets of questions for different types of respondents, but you still have some of the same questions you want to ask them. This is an easy way of accomplishing that. branch logic. This is really helpful, and this is probably one of the things that you'll, if you do survey flow, this is what you'll use the most of. Um, and this is, we've seen this kind of logic uh, before. Are you age 18 or over? Select choice. Yes is selected. You can say okay, and then you can, uh, actually this would be, and then let's say, okay, now that they're over 18, you can ask them what their BMI is. And you can put another element under there. You can move other things under there. And it's nice. You see all these arrows and it shows you what's indented and where uh, different parts uh, come in. And of course, you can have more than one condition, just like we do with the skip and display logic and any other logic that we've done. Of course, as I've said before, if this starts getting really complicated, you need to rethink how you're doing things. You want to keep it simple just to keep your own sanity as you're going through these. Let's just take a look at options. Exclude from progress bar calculation. That just means if they come into this branch, you can do the progress bar at the bottom of the survey. That shows how far along in the survey. And this just excludes this branch from that calculation for whatever reason you might want. Then you can collapse the whole thing. If you have a long survey with a lot of survey flow, doing the collapse makes things a little bit easier to work with. You don't have to keep scrolling back and forth. Now, one thing is if you say delete here, it's going to delete everything within that branch. So if you don't want to delete this block, you got to move it out. Now you can delete this and it won't change anything. Embedded data, we're going to talk about this a little bit more as we go along, but this is a way of adding data to your survey without your respondents necessarily seeing it or having to answer a question. And this is one way of calculating the BMI, which we're going to do in a minute. And you can take the information from the survey metadata, information from your contact list, or embedded data that you've already created. So I can call this, just going to call it dummy for now. I can set a value. And it can come from any of the piped text, any survey questions that we have. Or you can even just say, I want it equal to 1. And you can add as many fields here as you want. Come over here to options. And this is where you can set what type of data this is. And this can be important, especially if you're doing reports within Qualtrics. Certain types of variables can't be used in certain types of charts. So you can change it. Text set is several short answers together. Multi-value text set is the same thing. Number set is several numbers. Usually you're not going to be using these three. It's going to be number, plain text, or a date. And then you can also use it just to filter your data in Qualtrics reporting. Analyze text. Qualtrics has well, I guess compared to things like Atlas TI and NVivo, qualitative text analysis for your open-ended answers. And so you can add this embedded data to that further analysis. All right, we're going to talk more about this in a minute. Take that out for now. Randomizer. We've looked at randomizing questions, randomizing particular answers. This works exactly the same way, except now you can randomize all of these blocks all at once, and it works just like the other ones do. Present number of elements. Of course, you have to have an element in there. I'm just going to move a couple of these down so you can see how this number increments. And we talked about evenly present elements when we did the question randomization, the other randomization. And we'll take a closer look at how you can put a lot of these things together and do some cool stuff. Take that out. Yes. The web service, this is if you want to pull information from another website and they allow you to do that. So you might want to have current stock prices or today's weather or some other thing like that. And you can pull that information from the URL. And we're not going to go through the details, but just so you know that this is here and it's available. You can also add whatever it pulls as embedded data so that basically it will just display it to your user, and once they submit, it's gone. So if you want to know what that day's weather or that day's stock price was, you want to set it as as embedded data so that you can download it with all the other data. The text sentiment, as I mentioned, Qualtrics has some ability to do text analysis. And this can be very useful if, as you're allowing people to write short answers or, maybe a paragraph or so, and you want to look for very specific phrases and things so that, if they say, I am very sad, you can set this up so that it will automatically send an email to you or some other, there's other ways of notifying you so that you can get back to that person right away. I actually haven't done a lot with the text stuff, but it's here and they're really building this out. Group, we'll see the uses for group is you can just put various things together and keep them together. I'm going to show you, a couple of experimental things a little bit later, and it'll be more obvious how this is used. And again, you can change the name on it, and that's always recommended. Authenticator. There's two ways of authenticating users. One is to pull their information from a contact list. And you can even, so if you're using a contact list, you just figure out which one and what fields they have to put in correctly. You can also add a password to it, but the thing is that the password is the same for everybody, which isn't really useful as a password. You can also use the single sign-on, but of course that's only going to work if the person has a net ID at Syracuse University. And there is some other information that you can pull in with the SSO. I have a help sheet on my Qualtrics page for doing authentication using the SSO. So if you find you need or want to do that, that's the best place to go. End of survey, you will likely use this as well. And then you go to customize, override the survey options. And of course, if you just leave it at default, end of survey, there's other things you can do. You can write a custom end of survey message, and you put those in your libraries, and at the end of the survey, it will show that specific message. Or you can redirect people to a different URL. And this is what I use when you fill in that sign in survey page. It redirects you to the Zoom link. You can send additional thank you emails. Don't increment the quota count. That, depending on, see, something like this, these would be used with a branch, so that, say, the person's not 18. You don't want them to increment a quota that you might have. Show the response summary. That is at the end of the survey. It will show the respondent all of the answers that they gave. This says, do not record any personal information and remove panel association. This is for super duper anonymity and privacy. It says not recommended, but sometimes you might need or want to do this. If you have a very sensitive survey, you want to make sure that there's absolutely no personal identifying information saved with the person's answers. And then it says, do not record survey response. Again, not recommended. That just means it's not going to record. It's not going to enter the data into your data file. And as it says, I don't really recommend that either, because you can always go back and delete that observation in SPSS or Excel. I'm not crazy about not recording everything, because you do need to know how many people came in and at least started your survey. And reference survey. This is useful if you have several surveys going on all at once and you want to ask the same questions in each one, such as demographic information. age, gender, where they're from, etc. Um, Now you can make a block for demographic questions and put it in your library. And then as you create the main surveys, you can copy that in from the library into each of the surveys. The thing with doing it that way is if you need to make a change on one of those demographic questions, you're going to have to go into each individual survey and make that change. Whereas if you insert it as a reference survey, you just need to go into the version that's in the library, make the change there, and then that change will be propagated throughout all the other surveys that are using it. So it can really make your life a lot easier if, as I say, you're doing several surveys at once. If you're just doing them one at a time, then um, pulling it in, uh, just copying it from the library is fine. Are there any questions so far?
Yes, I have a question about the blocks. So say you're looking at your survey and you're in the survey flow and you see that you put a question in the wrong block, or you want to move it to a different block, or you forgot to add a question. Do you have to go back to the original survey and make those changes, or can you make them using this survey flow?
Yeah, if you want to move individual questions, then yes, you need to go back to the survey.
Okay.
So if I wanted to move these BMI up to this block, I would have to do that here.
Mm-hmm.
The survey flow is just working on blocks as a whole.
Okay. Okay.
Now, if you want to delete the whole block, then yeah, you can just go in and delete the whole block.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. Thank you.
okay.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Okay, so let's do a little bit of some fun stuff here. Add a condition. Actually, come up here because I can do add below. We'll say branch, add a condition, question, select question. Are you 18 or over? We'll say, for right now, we'll say no, is selected. Say okay. And we can come here and go to end of survey. And we can customize it however we want, with the default, or we'll do a custom end of survey. And you can create a new one, new message. And what we would do with this in this instance is say, thank you very much, but you need to be over 18. We can create another branch. I'm going to move this down here. And pretty much do the same thing, except now we're going to say yes. Now we can move all of these under here. So your respondents come in, you ask them, are they 18 or not? If they're not, they get moved out. If they are, then they can move through the rest of the questions. Now, of course, here we have another BMI. And this is where something like embedded data comes in handy. So I want to create an embedded data field that I'm going to call BMI. Click on Insert Pipe Text. Question. How tall are you? You've seen how we did this last week. And hopefully I did that right. I don't always. So now we have the BMI and set it as embedded data. And so now we can do another branch. Now we're going to use embedded data instead. BMI. Now you have is equal to, you get all these other things. So I'm just going to say is greater than, I'm going to say 10. And you can see how I'm moving these around to get them. See, and now so now if the person is 18 or over, they can start answering these questions. They'll answer the two questions: how tall are you and how much do you weigh? And then you can calculate the BMI. And then from there, you can branch. And based on the BMI, they will either be sent to questions about SurveyMonkey, or they'll be sent to questions about Qualtrics. Now you can get real fancy with some of this stuff. Just to show you. Where to go? Where to go? Where is it? Here we go. Go over to this other one. Oh, let me save it. That's what's nice about Qualtrics is you have to really want to shoot yourself in the foot. All right. All right. Why is it not letting me? Really? Shouldn't have to do that. Are you kidding me? All right, let's try it this way. Okay, here's a little experimental design that I set up. Of course, we have the consent block. I'm over 18 and I agree. Instructions, and then the actual experimental conditions, experimental blocks. And then a dependent variable that all of the respondents will get. Come over here to survey flow. You see we have the consent block and the instructions. And then we start the randomization. And it says randomly present one of the following elements. And of course, it's evenly present. And then we have 4 experimental groups. And so you can see how the group element makes your life a little bit easier because you can put the embedded data. This is setting up the experimental groups and the independent variables, number of sentences and text size. So this is experimental group 1-1. And of course, I've named everything to coincide with each other so you know where you are. Block 1-1, 1-2, 1-2, all the way through. So as people come through, they'll say, yes, I'm 18. Yes, I agree to do this. They'll get the instructions, and then they will be randomly sent to any one of these 4 groups. They'll answer the 2 questions, and then everybody gets sent down to the 1 dependent question. And that's how you can set up a simple but effective experimental design. We'll take a look at one more. This one is a little bit different, as you can see. In this one, see, we kind of have a double randomization. The first one randomly assigns people to the experimental groups. And then once they're assigned to that group, they have the embedded data set. And then there's another randomizer group. And that randomizes which blocks they see. They'll see all 3 of these, because we have the 3 there, but each person will get it in a different order. And as I mentioned, when you download your data, which we'll see in a couple of weeks, there's an option to include the randomization information. And it will show you what order each respondent saw these different blocks in, which can be useful, and it might even be something you want to know. But it's very good for actually examining the data and making sure that it was indeed random. And you'll need to know these little IDs, these flow IDs, because this is what will come out in the data. And so you can do that with each of these. So as you can see, you can get pretty fancy with the survey flow, and you can really do some neat stuff. Are there any questions so far? Okay, I think that's pretty much, yeah, because experimental uses the branch embedded data in randomizer. We've done end of survey and the other things. Um, So let's see. Oh, we have a little bit of time, so maybe I'll start a little bit on workflows. Workflow as opposed to survey flow. Why they call them workflows, because it could get, I guess, confusing with survey flow, but oh, yeah, let me save it at least. What you can do in workflows and what mostly you will do with workflows is have Qualtrics workflows trigger once the person has submitted the survey or at a scheduled time. That's as opposed to the survey flow, which works as the person is in the survey itself. So we'll do, most of the time you're going to be started by an event, and that event will be when the person clicks submit. And so that is survey response. These other ones I've never used. Not everybody here. One thing is we'll see more of these, I guess, tiles or whatever you want to call them. Even though you see it, you may not have access to all of the things that you would need to actually use it. But you definitely have survey response. And it can be either newly created response, which is one person hits submit, or responses updated via the Qualtrics API. I've never seen anybody use that. And as it says, it's just something that's, when it's updated. So it starts out, then you can have a task or a condition, and the conditions are just like before. Let's say question, select a question. Are you 18 or over? Yes. Is selected. Save condition. And here's where it gets fun, is you can add a task, something for Qualtrics to do when somebody who is 18 or over submits the survey. Now, as I said, there's a whole bunch of these tiles. Many of these, or in fact, most of them, you will never use. Some of them, you don't even really have access to all the behind the scenes things that you need to make it work. But they're there. Most of the time, what you're going to want to do is either add somebody to a contact list, which is the XM directory, or you are going to want to send them an email. There's another thing that you might use sometimes is Google Sheets. If you want to give people, say, an Amazon coupon for $10 for filling out your survey. Google Sheets is how you would do that. And I have a a video, I think, on my Qualtrics page on how to use this. It can be quite useful, but it's a little more involved than we can get into right now. But let's do email. If it stops spinning. And so, just like any email, you need to put in the email address. You can put in, as it says, up to 30 separated by a comma, or just one person. Or you can even come over here from the pipe text and pull it from a survey question if you ask for their email. Panel field is also a contact list. You'll see sometimes it's called the directory. Sometimes it's called a contact list, and sometimes it's called a panel. It's all the same thing. It's just panels is what they called it when they first started Qualtrics. Then as they improved and updated things, they gave it different names. But it's all basically the same thing. First name, last name, email is what you need for it. Or as I say, if you ask for their email in the survey, you can pull it from there. You fill in the from address. By default, instead of this saying data services, since I'm in the PH Burn account, if you remember way back on the first day, I showed you how to change some of the defaults. That's where I did this. And of course, you can change the from name and the reply to email, etc. A subject line, of course, you always need a subject line. And again, you can have a fixed subject line that you want to use from your library. Or again, you can do piped text. So if you ask their first name, you can say, Paul, your survey is ready, or Paul, whatever. When you want to send it, either immediately, as soon as they click submit, it fires this workflow and then the email gets sent. Or you can schedule it after a certain amount of time, whether that's hours, days, weeks, or months. And you can have, various messages already added in here. Or you can just say, dear, and then again, use the pipe text. Yeah. And put the rest of your body, your message in here. With the options, include the response report it includes all their answers. And show full question text it just shows the full text of the question instead of just their answers. So, that's pretty straightforward. And as I say, the other thing, most common thing you will do is add them to a contact list. This is particularly useful if you have an anonymous survey, but you want to be able to ask them for if they're willing to be contacted later for follow-up questions. As you would have that as your last answer to your survey. Are you willing, to give us your email so we can ask you other questions? If they say yes, then in your survey flow, you redirect them to a second survey that asks for their name and email address. And then in that second survey is where you would put this workflow and add them to the directory, whether it's one that you already have set up, or you can create a new one. Then you can pull their first name from the survey, the last name, email address. You need at least those three. Rest of these you don't have to have, but you got to have those three. And you can even add some of your embedded data fields. So I created a BMI field. And so this will automatically add their BMI to your contact list information. Then when you either email them or maybe even create another survey to send to them, you have that BMI already in there. You don't have to ask them again for their height and weight and recalculate it. Update the recipient from the survey response is you can update if they're already in that contact list, but you're getting new information from them, it will update that information. And unsubscribe means it will flag them in the contact list so that if you do send out another survey using that contact list, they will not be sent the new survey. You've seen in various emails, unsubscribe from this list. That's basically what it's doing. Any questions about that? Okay, I think that is just about it. I do have, I'm going to leave without saving because I don't really need it. Here. Oh, I'm looking. Where did it go? Oh, well. I had created a quick survey because here it is. I am going to be revamping this series of workshops, and I would like your thoughts on it. So I'm going to paste the anonymous link into the chat, and I will be emailing this out at the end of the whole thing as well. But as you probably saw very quickly, it's just one big question. And so any comments, suggestions, anything that you have regarding, are there too many classes? Are there too few? Are they too long, too short? What can I do better? What are things that you would like to see or things that you wouldn't want to see anymore? So as you have time, I would very much like your suggestions. And of course, as you know, it's fully anonymous, and I'll be pasting this each week. We only have a couple more weeks, and then emailing it out to everybody who's been here at one time or another. But as I say, I greatly appreciate any of your comments and suggestions. And so are there any other questions before we go? Okay, excellent.
Paul, can you also
Yes.
send us your notes again this week?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, I will do that.
Paul,
Yes.
I do have a question.
Mhm.
And it's it's probably when I should have asked weeks ago. But
okay.
yeah, so I put together a survey and I couldn't remember where to go to add like an introduction, some introductory text. So I put that into the email that I used, but can I make a block that is just like introductory text?
Sure. All you need to do is just add a block. And of course, you can move that block up to the top. I want to do that as a first one. And then when you do add new question, you just want to do text/graphic. And it says click to write the question text, but it's not really a question. This.
Okay. Text graphic block. Okay, got it. And then I also, if you don't mind, a double question. I did a little bit of editing in my survey, and the numbering got screwed up, which I was like, okay, I knew that was going to happen, but then I couldn't remember how to fix it.
Okay. So like here, Q1 is coming after Q2. Is that?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So what you do is you come up to tools.
Tools, okay.
And then auto number questions. And then sequential numbering. You just click on it. It'll do its thing. And we'll go through and it will renumber everything 1 through however many you have.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else? Okay, then. I'll see everybody here next Monday at 3 o'clock. Have a good week.